My father used to say, because in those days there was a seawall around the island because Collins had built it and then pumped the sand out of the through a dredge and filled in because Balboa Island was just a mud flat.
Right.
And he pumped the sand out of the bay and filled in behind the seawall. The seawall was only maybe this high. They built the other seawall, the new seawall, years later. But my father used to say that there were no streets. You know, the patterns of the streets, it's very sort of linear. It's not creative in any sense, but they used to get these high tides and the seawall, the water would come over the seawall and flood the island. And so he and his brother would get in a canoe or a rowboat or something, and they'd roll around on the streets during the floods. About 1917, 1918, the family had a house at 602 South Bay Front, which was initially the property consisted initially of a small one-story bungalow in back of the lot, backing up to the alley, which I don't know if the alleys were paved then, but anyway, it backed up to the alley. It was a one-story. Subsequently, they built the house, which was a duplex, two-story duplex, on the front of the lot, which is what you see in the picture. And so the family used to use the back house as sort of the family vacation house. My grandparents lived downstairs in the front house, and then they rented the top story during the vacation. The grandparents lived in Pasadena, so they would come down to Balboa Island because the beach house was here. The bungalow in the back of the lot was built from lumber that they salvaged from a barn, a big barn on the family had a citrus ranch in Laverne on Foothill Boulevard. And so they tore the barn down and transferred the lumber. I don't know how they got it there, but they moved the lumber from Laverne to Balboa Island, and they built the back house out of the seasoned lumber from the barn in Laverne. And so as a child, we used to come down to the island once a year for vacation, usually anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. And we'd spend time in the back of the house and do what kids do during the vacation. My sister Kathy there was a camp right here on the little island. And there's pictures of it in this museum of the I don't know, was it a Methodist camp?
Yeah,
Mason.
Mason.
Yeah, because she was in my grandfather in this picture is a Mason, and she was in the women's equivalent, the girls' equivalent. So she went to the camp here a while, many times. So the family enjoyed yearly trips down here, and before, I remember coming here probably starting in the late 1940s, and we came here every summer. It was just, my dad used to buy a rowboat. He'd find old rowboats, and he'd put wooden stands up on the beach, and of course you can't do that now. And he'd scrape the paint, and the tide would take out the old paint, and we'd paint an old rowboat, and that's what we row around the bay. Before Linda Island was developed, I'd get in the rowboat, row over to Linda Island, which was just a sand bar, and just spend all day over there. My grandfather, who's in the picture, decided that he wanted to become a gentleman farmer. So they, unbeknownst to anybody in the family, they sold the beachfront house to, there was a TV sportscaster back in the 50s named Dick Lane. And Dick Lane used to do all the programs for roller derby and wrestling, pro wrestling in Los Angeles. And he bought the house, and I think he paid like $30,000 or something for the whole property. But
was it 1958 or something?
about 1955, 56, something like that. She was the first rental agent on the island, and she would come down on the weekends and place the sandwich board sign out in the front of the house, and people would walk by on the bayfront, and they'd inquire as to, I'd like to rent this house, or do you have any rentals? Well, back then there weren't a whole lot of rentals. There weren't a whole lot of houses on the island. Ultimately, that obviously changed. Well, he always used to tease me. There was a band leader, and his name was Ish Kabibble. Now, I've looked him up on the internet. He did exist, but his name was Ish Kabibble. I said, Dad, what the heck kind of name is Ish Kabibble? He says, well, we used to come down and dance to his band.
I was talking to one lady,
Story.
and I could tell, you know, her age. You know, she said, "Oh, I've been here. I've been coming down here forever, just forever." I think as a little kid, and all that. So I said, "Well, so is my father-in-law." I said, "Maybe you know him," and she said, "Well," I said, "Halderman." She says, "Oh, you mean the twins?" And I said, "Yeah, the twins." She said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "They were so good looking." And I said, "Yes, they are still good looking." And she said, "Yeah, they had, the grocery store was over on the peninsula. So the twins..."
The grocery store was in the space where the little drugstore is located. If you get off, it's right down the street from the pavilion. Mm-hmm. And that's where
And so she said they would order more food just so that the twins, because the twins had the rowboat. People would call over there. They would row the bags of food over, bring it to the house. They had a little wagon. They put it in, so they could
deliver the groceries around to the houses,
so they could see the twins.
My Uncle Fran was always. He was really the epitome back then of the old term, the need for speed.
Right.
He used to, before they had a speed limit in the bay, he would buy old inboard Chris Crafts and old speedboats, and he'd soup up the engine in the speedboat, and he'd get at one end of the bay, and he'd just put the throttle in full gear, and he'd just speed down the bay, probably doing, 25, 30, 40 miles an hour. And of course, the waves would hit the boats out in the middle of the channel, and people would complain about, so that's when they set the speed limit. And we moved to 228 Opal.
Okay.
And we lived there
10 years.
10 years, then on Begonia and Corona del Mar, and then back to 217?
Yeah.
217 Garnet. And so we lived there for, 5 years?
5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years. So this is a home. This is really important to both of us. The family just has, between the house at the bayfront and Rosemary and I being here, ultimately, years later, it's just been a very special place for our family, and continues to be a very special place.